If you're serious about real estate, you eventually face a decision. Do you flip or do you hold? Both can make money, but they do not build wealth the same way. Let's take a look at the difference. There are two fundamental ways to make money in real estate. One is linear. You buy, improve, sell, and start over. The other compounds. You buy, improve, refinance, and hold. One creates income. The other builds equity over time. Let's start with the one most people think is fastest, the flip. Most people think they need a pile of cash to invest. In reality, capital is structured, it's not saved. It can come from partners, it can come from appreciated property, it can come from a low down 2 to 4 unit FHA strategy, and sometimes it can come from equity in your own home, but only if the numbers create a positive spread. Capital can come from savings, partners, or equity in your home, but once you introduce borrowed money, you introduce risk. Debt doesn't create wealth, it magnifies outcomes. So before we talk about any deal, we have to talk about leverage, because leverage only works when the math works. Now let's look at the other side. If you borrow $1,000 at 7%, that costs you $7,000 a year. But if you only earn 6% on that investment, you generate $6,000 a year. That's a $1,000 negative spread. That's negative leverage. The debt is now working against you. And this is how investors get into trouble. Borrowing is not the advantage, the spread is. Before we move on, remember this. Every market has its own cycle, and what's happening in Fresno may not be happening in New York. What's expanding in one city may be peaking in another. Real estate is local. If you're flipping, timing matters more. If you're holding, time smooths the cycle, but you must know where you are. Let's look at an actual deal. We've identified a fixer that we believe will be worth 650,000 once improved. We're purchasing it for 500,000. We're budgeting 50,000 for renovation, and that gives us a total basis of $550,000. If the 650 value is real, there's roughly $100,000 gross spread, but that spread only exists if several things are true. The value must be accurate, the renovation must stay on budget, the resale window must cooperate, and the discount must be genuine, not imagined. Now let's look at how a hard money lender views this same deal. Here's how a hard money lender sees this deal. They don't care about the drain, they care about loan to value. At 70% of the purchase price, they'll lend about $350,000. That means you bring in roughly $150,000 for the down. Add the $50,000 rehab budget. Add points and closing costs, and now you've invested roughly $212,000 in cash. That's the capital at risk. If everything goes according to plan, that capital works beautifully. But if the market slows, you could be talking about an additional 2 extra months. In your 5% price cut, that $45,000 margin shrinks to about $4,500. This is the same property, the same work, but a very different outcome. And that's before we talk about something else, the market itself. Because on top of execution, on top of financing, on top of timing your renovation, you also have to catch the right part of the real estate cycle. We just walked through a flip. We saw how tight the margins can get. We saw how timing matters. We saw how the cycle can shrink your profit. Now let's take the exact same 200,000, but instead of using it for a flip, what if we used it as a 25% down payment? That buys us an $800,000 apartment building. We utilize a professional management company, which costs about 6%, so we're not swinging hammers, we're buying income. Now let me show you what that actually looks like on paper. Now let's compare. Instead of putting 200,000 into a flip, we put 200,000 down on an $800,000 building. The bank lends the rest. Professional management handles the operations. We don't fix toilets. We don't chase tenants. We review statements. We collect distributions. The property produces about 14,000 a year in cash flow, and that cash flow has room to grow. And here's the part most people miss. This doesn't end in 1 year. Let's fast forward 10 years. We didn't flip, we didn't guess the cycle, we held. Over 10 years, rents rose, expenses adjusted, the loan balance shrank, the property value increased. What started as a $200,000 investment now controls a multi-million dollar asset. The equity grew, the income grew, and we didn't have to be right every 6 months. We just had to be patient. Let me show you how wealth is actually created in apartment buildings. We raise rent by $100 per unit. By 8 units, that's 9,600 more per year in income. If the market trades at an 8 gross multiplier, that income increase adds 76,800 in value. And if a lender allows 70% loan to value, that creates about 53,000 in potential refinance proceeds. One rent increase, that's how wealth is created, not by guessing, by improving income. Now let's look at two quiet tailwinds. First, inflation. Assuming about 3% a year, inflation gradually lifts rents. Your income adjusts over time, your mortgage payment does not. So inflation slowly improves your position. Here's tailwind number two, depreciation. Even though you're receiving about 14,000 a year in cash flow, the tax code allows you to deduct over 23,000 in depreciation. That can reduce your taxable income, sometimes even to zero. So you're earning income, but you may not be paying taxes on that income. Inflation pushes the asset up, depreciation protects the cash flow. Two tailwinds, same property. Now we come to the biggest advantage of all, the step up in basis. When an owner passes away, the property does not carry the old tax basis forward. The basis resets to the current market value, and that means decades of appreciation can transfer to your heirs without triggering capital gains taxes. The building steps up, the tax liability disappears, and the next generation inherits both the asset and the income stream. This is how real estate transfers wealth, not by flipping, not by timing, but by holding. That's the structure. Let's look at the first path. We take $200,000 and put it into a flip. We buy right, we renovate right, we sell at the right time. If everything goes well, we make a profit. But when the deal closes, the project ends, the income stops, the clock resets, and we have to go find another deal. Now take that same $200,000 and use it differently. Instead of flipping, we put it down on an $800,000 apartment building. The bank finances the rest. Professional management runs it. The property produces income. Rents can raise. The loan shrinks. The value grows. We're not starting over every 6 months. We're compounding. Same $200,000, different outcome. Let me close with this. Income is linear. Compounding is exponential. I've known a lot of people who've made very good money flipping properties. If you need fast cash, flipping absolutely has its place. You do the work, you sell, you get paid, but it's linear. You start over each time. Buy and hold is different. If you can let time work, rents rise, debt shrinks, value grows, and taxes are structured. Both strategies work. The question is what you're building. If you want to run the numbers yourself, download the calculator and test it. See you in the next lesson.